All right. Thank you and welcome to the Port of Olympia Commission meeting. It's Monday, February 26th, 2024, and it is 5:31 p.m. This meeting is now called to order. As usual, we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Basava, would you?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Thank you. Just make a quick note that Commissioner Sanders will not be with us this evening for some health reasons. We wish her a speedy recovery and look forward to seeing her at the next meeting. So we have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
A motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have discussion. I would like to move item H1 from the action calendar, the CSD contract authorization. I'd like to propose moving it to our next commission meeting. Maggie Sanders will be back, but also I think that there are bigger conversations about our legal representation, and this would give us a chance to get a little bit more information about that. So I'd propose moving I would move to strike item H, the action calendar, and move it to next week's agenda. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to strike the action calendar and move item number 1, CSD contract authorization, to the next commission meeting agenda. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor of all in favor of striking the action calendar and moving CSD contract authorization to the next meeting agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I am opposed also. So that is a tie. So
It fails.
it does not pass. So this, we will keep the CSD contract authorization on the action calendar for this evening. Is there any further discussion on the agenda?
I would like to add item I4, executive director contract under action other.
Was that a second?
Mhm.
Okay, we have a motion to add to the agenda the executive director contract under action other, item number 4. And we have a second. Is there any discussion about that?
Very excited about the progress our HR team has been making on that. I'm excited to talk about it as a group.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of adding under action other calendar, the executive director contract, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. So we will add the executive director contract under action other calendar this evening. Is there any other discussion about this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I will call for the vote to approve this evening's agenda with one addition. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So we have an agenda for this evening. Next up on the agenda is the executive director report. Rudy Rudolph, executive director, you have the floor.
For sure. Okay.
Is this maybe something we should come back to? Got it? All right, there we go.
Okay, next page. Okay, congratulations, Alex Smith, on being selected as the Port of Olympia's Executive Director. Thank you to the Port Commissioners, interview team members, Port staff, and the community members who contributed to our Executive Director recruitment process. We're looking forward to welcoming Alex on board on March 18th. On February 14th, Commissioner Isle participated in the Thurston County Chamber Forum centered on the topic, the climate crisis and impacts on business. The event provided an engaging platform for dialogue with Daniel Worth, the Executive Director of the American Red Cross Northwest Region. Phase 1 of the Bud Inlet sediment testing was successfully completed last Thursday. Over the span of 7 weeks, the team identified and collected samples from hundreds of targeted locations in the inlet, which have been sent to laboratory for testing. Phase 2 of the sediment testing is still being scheduled. All right, and here is going to be, in just a moment, a look at the video production highlighting our marine terminal paper pulp cargo operations by Suzano. The eucalyptus paper pulp product is at the forefront of the regenerative economy, ensuring a carbon neutral and net zero carbon emissions production process. We're proud to support our partner and customer. Okay, and as usual, we value your input. Public comment opportunities are listed there. And if you have any questions, you can see access to the board through our website, www.portolympia.com. That's all I have, Commissioners. Thank you.
Great. Is there any questions or comments for Director Rudolph, Acting Director Rudolph? Yes.
Cool video. It's really cool. It's exciting.
Right up
to
there with the
see.
cattle one from years ago.
Yeah, no, it's super fun to see it all come together in a visual format to educate people about what we do and connecting sustainable shipping with Olympia and the broader economy. It's exciting. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. It's very exciting to have this sustainable opportunity here, and I hope we can continue to look for sustainable growth that help people. Revenue.
Comment, question? No?
Nothing to add.
I will just add that the video was outstanding, Rudy. In a past life, I worked a lot with cranes, and I was a certified rigger, and you know, I just really get a thrill when I see how those loads are picked up off those ships and placed right on the trucks. It's quite an operation.
Note to Camille for the future, cranes.
So anyway, all right. So moving on, we will move into public comment. Individual public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Members of the public may comment on an agenda item and other port business. Guidelines for public comment can be found in the commission rules and resolution 2022-09, Article 6. And comments should be directed to the commission as a whole and should not include comments about individual port staff or members of the public. All speakers shall be courteous in language and demeanor and shall confine remarks to those facts that are germane and relevant to the questions or issue under discussion. So we have one in-person public comment signed up, Mr. Dobson. Okay. So you're wanting to comment on the action calendar?
Action other.
Oh, our Article I1. Okay, that's fine. We'll wait for you then. Is there anybody on the Zoom that would like to make public comment? Mr. Gunther, you have the floor.
I hope that you can hear me. I'm Bob Gunther. I'm the president of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you folks tonight as a board. It's come to my attention as the president of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council that you folks have been in negotiation, that the port has been in negotiations with the Longshore Union who do the work, the maintenance work at the port. And I'm understanding that you've been in mediation for nearly a year now. And, you know, I've told the Longshore folks today, I said, hey, why don't you guys start meeting in person again so that we can actually get this ironed out? And I ask for consideration from the Longshore Union to make sure that this work was done in coordination and consciously, in conscious civility. And so I have had experience in mediation and arbitration in the past years. I've been a member of organized labor for nearly 50 years. And really the way we figure things out is face to face with a good regard for each other's positions. So I would encourage you to think about that and actually see if we couldn't encourage folks to start getting together and doing a little bit more work face to face. And here again, thanks so much for allowing me to have the opportunity to say hello to you. And I hope that we can get this worked out so that those 16 workers down there at that port have a chance to make a living that is will support their families. So thank you again very much, and have a good evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gunther. Anyone else on Zoom for public comment?
No additional public comment.
All right, we will then move on. There's nothing on the consent calendar or pending issues or business. We have an action calendar item, CSD contract authorization. Ben McDonald, Director of Human Resources and Administration. You have the floor.
Great. Hello, commissioners. Good evening. Happy to be before you tonight to present on the CSD Attorneys at Law contract. Today's presentation is an action approval is requested. We're seeking approval of the contract with CSD Attorneys at Law. Just a reminder, this is for contract authorization, is not a commitment to spend the money. As mentioned in my previous presentation, a little bit of background of CSD. They provide legal counsel to courts and other jurisdictions. They specialize in public contracting, employment and labor law, open government issues, and local agreements. They've been providing counsel to the Port of Olympia during contract negotiations with ILWU Local 47B, and we're currently using them during our mediation sessions. The original contract was a letter of engagement from CSD and approved up to $49,999 in 2022. It was amended in 2023 for a not to exceed amount of $100,000 and expired on December 31st. As I noted in my last presentation, we spent, let's say, roughly $76,000 of the $100,000. So we're looking to do a new contract with CSD. The previous agreement was a letter of engagement and not, which suffices for services to be provided, but not through our regular formatted port contracts. We'd like to transition it to there. Also in 2023, Schmelik, Sicken, and Davis changed their firm's name to CSD Attorneys at Law. And then we believe the new contract will better clarify scope of services. Which takes us to this slide. I think Commissioner Ayala asked for a little more detail on their services. Currently, they're being used during mediation sessions, as I mentioned. They would provide legal counsel during negotiations with Local 47A if needed. That is upcoming. We're due to begin contract negotiations with them this spring. They would provide legal counsel if the parties entered into arbitration. I don't think that's the direction we're going. I feel confident that we're headed in a positive direction and we're getting closer. But that will be one area that they would provide expertise in. And then their scope of services says provide legal counsel as directed by the commission. So if this commission needed to use them for another form or service, it would be your prerogative. So a couple different options. It was recommended last time we met. We're recommending the term February 26th to December 31st, 2025. Option one would be to approve $50,000 for that time frame. The preferred / proposed option is the same time frame, but $100,000. And I'll just reiterate my earlier slide. It's not a commitment to spend that money. We hope we don't even come close to that. It's just to ensure that we have representation during negotiations. Questions and comments and a suggested motion for you. I left the amount blank for you to determine what you would like to do.
Questions, comments? Savani, you want to start?
Sure. I'm interested in moving today to fund this contract to the extent that otherwise there is no contract currently in place and mediation is ongoing with the longshoremen. At the same time, as I indicated last week, I have concerns about, I really think it's very important that we have just a short-term solution while we wait to onboard an executive director. And I do have, the public comment was very meaningful to me today. I do believe it's important that we get back in the room to negotiate and not rely too heavily on an extended contract. So for this reason, I will be making a motion today, but for less than the fully recommended amount.
Are you making a motion?
Oh, sure. I move to authorize the interim executive director to sign contract number 2024-1004 with CSD Attorneys at Law PS with a term date of December 31st, 2025 and a not to exceed amount of $25,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the interim executive director to sign contract number 2024-1004 with CSD Attorneys at Law with a term date of December 31st, 2025, and a not to exceed amount of $25,000. Any discussion on the motion?
Oh, sorry, I didn't. get that.
Point of order, I didn't hear a second. I apologize if I didn't. Was there a second?
Yes, there was a
Got it.
second.
Okay, thank you.
Can I give my comment next? So I appreciate that this is being brought through this path because the letter of engagement on personal services contracts, although technically in keeping with our practice, when we anticipate them being amended, I think this is a better process. The 25,000 is within the executive director's direct authority. And so out of respect for you coming to the commission, I wonder, is the 25,000 enough? That would be my concern because the executive director can do that without our permission. And I want to encourage this process because I think it helps have more orderly review of our personal services contracts rather than just using the letter of engagement with amendments. So can you speak? to that?
I'd love to say yes, 25,000 will be sufficient. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how many more times we would meet. I'm hoping that it's not very many. I think both parties are engaged and very interested in getting this, completed. First year contracts do take longer. And so 25,000, 50,000, it's hard for me to guess. And, if we got into sticking points with 47A, we would have services to use, but, with respect to 47B, I'm hopeful that we're close. I just can't say that, it would equal that.
I appreciate Commissioner Vasavada's $25,000 amount to try and keep things moving. Because of my own personal desire to move things away from the letter of engagement and executive director authority, I would move to amend the motion to reflect $50,000.
May I offer a
Yeah,
comment?
I think, Rick, can you weigh in?
Sure, so, Commissioner Harding's, motion to amend would have to have a second to move forward. Does get a second, we would vote on that first. If it passes, then that's your motion approved. If it doesn't pass, then you vote on Commissioner Vasavada's initial motion.
All right, thank
But
you.
I may reiterate what Ben had said. Just like any other contract that we bring to you, this has a contract authorization amount and it has a date associated with it. So whatever dollar amount that you put in there is not a commitment that we're going to spend that amount. It's a contract authorization. If it reaches the point that whatever, whether you put 25, 50, 100, any contract that we would be reaching the point that of actually spending the contract authorization, we obviously would have to come back to you again for other commission action.
Commissioner Harding, I'll second your amendment as a friendly amendment. I appreciate the input you're adding about sort of the transparency that this brings. And that is, I'm committed to transparency, sustainable development, and living wage jobs. I think that your amendment to my amendment helps thread that needle to make sure that as we launch with a new executive director, we have a chance to really look at these things pretty hard again. So thank you, and I will second your amendment.
Okay, we have an amended motion with a second. Is there any further discussion? The amended motion is to authorize the interim executive director to sign contract number 2024-1004 with CSD Attorneys at Law with a term date of December 31st, 2025, and a not to exceed amount of $50,000. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Right, and you have authorization for the contract. Thank you, everybody, for that good discussion and conclusion to the discussion. Appreciate it. So moving on to action other calendar. aviation fuel tax interlocal agreement. Warren Hendrickson, Director of Operations. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners. Warren Hendrickson, Director of Operations, here to talk to you tonight about an aviation fuel tax interlocal agreement. The purpose of this interlocal agreement is to achieve additional revenue for our state's airports.
Warren, I need, hold on a second. It's not sharing properly, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Warren. It got rid of my.
What's up there? It's in the upper left-hand corner.
It's not letting me share as properly. I'm just gonna run this then. It's sharing. It's not sharing. It's not sharing on Zoom. Go ahead, Warren, I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Missy. So aviation fuel tax interlocal agreement, again, the purpose of this interlocal agreement is to provide additional revenues to the state airports and the state aeronautics account. Tonight is an action other item, so approval is requested. We discuss a little bit of background on the state's aviation fuel taxes, how Washington State has been non-compliant with federal regulations and guidelines with regard to these taxes, the ultimate compliance action plan, the interlocal agreement itself, and legal funding. And this item was brought to the commission last week during an advisory presentation on February 20th. I will, as a result, abbreviate my remarks slightly tonight in recognition of the in-depth discussion that we had last week. And I would call the interested public's attention to last commission meeting's video for further details and if there is interest in this particular subject matter. A background on our fuel taxes and the needs in the state. In 2015, WSDOT Aviation, as a state agency, published an airport investment study. I realize it's somewhat dated, but the airport program grant program shortfall was over $12 million annually. In 2020, the last year that these grant requests were funding needs were made available, to show the verity of that particular figure, there were over $76.9 million in funding requests. Over $12.5 million of state matching funds were required, but there was only $1.4 million available. So you can see right there, the shortfall was $11.1 million in 2020. Those numbers now have substantially increased over time because of the cost of doing business and the consumer price index changes. Of all the states in the Northwest Mountain region, Washington State ranks last in funding per airport. Oregon's funding is triple that of Washington's. Wyoming, for example, as one of the least populated states in the entire country, spends 20 times per airport that Washington does. Next slide, please. In November of 2014, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration Policy and Procedures Branch, issued through the Federal Register its policy concerning the use of airport revenue. Specifically, and these are excerpt quotes from the Federal Register of that date, state taxes on aviation fuel imposed by either a sponsor or a non-sponsor are subject to use either for state aviation programs or for airport-related purposes. This policy amendment applies prospectively to the use of proceeds from new taxes not in effect on December 30th, 1987. All taxes prior to that date were grandfathered in. Any new or increased taxes subsequent to that date were subject to these policies. Next slide. In Washington State, what are these taxes? There are 6 different types. The aircraft fuel excise tax, which is based on 18 cents per gallon for every gallon of fuel sold. Primarily avgas, most of jet fuel is exempt from this particular tax. State retail sales tax and use tax, which amounts to 6.5% of the retail price. A hazardous substance tax we call HST, petroleum products tax, PPT, local sales and use taxes, which is spread across 107 local jurisdictions and 25 different types of taxes based upon local use, and oil spill taxes. In terms of the level of compliance within Washington State, only the top two items precede December of 1987. All the other taxes are being collected, but are not being returned to the state aeronautics program or to airports. I do want to also mention that in terms of the dollar amounts and the capability, these taxes are critical. They are all new or increased taxes subsequent to 1987. The annual amount of state revenue diversion, therefore, the total bottom line is over $58 million on an annual basis. That is substantial. The local sales and use taxes are not known, but in 2016, it was estimated to be approximately, I believe, $2.5 million per year. So you can add whatever those local sales and use taxes are across 107 jurisdictions, you can add that to the $58 million, but it has not been accurately determined to date. Why are these taxes important? And it's important to recognize too that these taxes are not taxes in the normal sense. They are not part of the port's levy. They are not part of taxes on the general population. They are essentially user fees because the only individuals that pay these taxes are the users of aviation fuel. So therefore, these taxes are included in the price per gallon at the pump. So if you do not use the fuel, you do not pay these taxes. So essentially 100% of the revenue that we're talking about here is paid by the users of the fuel. And it's important because if we don't make investments in our 132 public use airports, we will continue to see these airports degrade over time. A pavement condition index is the technical term, scientific term, that measures the quality of the pavement for our runways and taxiways and aprons. Anything below 70 is considered marginal and beginning to fail. As of this year, our state average is approximately 67 to 68. Our secondary runway at Olympia Regional Airport is today at 49. So this funding is absolutely critical to maintain our port infrastructure, not only for Olympia Regional Airport, but also for the states across the entire width of Washington. What is the fix to this? The Department of Revenue made a report to the state legislature in January of 2021. It first calculated revenue, the actual total amount that resulted in that $58 million figure just in the third quarter of 2023, from which the annual revenue diversion was calculated. And the corrective action to date is none. The date that this policy was issued by the FAA was November of 2014. We are now approaching 10 years later without a single nickel of these taxes that are supposed to go to state airports and aeronautical programs being supplied to the end user. We clearly have established the need. Airport pavement is funding. The funding already exists with no new taxes. And again, the fuel taxes are user fees. The missing ingredient is the political will. And the FAA certainly supports stopping this diversion so that the aeronautic programs can be properly funded. The Port of Olympia also has a responsibility to this because part of that same Federal Register documentation states that the airport sponsor will be expected to advise those entities of federal requirements for use of aviation fuel tax revenues and to take action reasonably within its capabilities. That means we as a port have a responsibility to help solve this problem. I will add one additional comment on this. The port is subject to many state agencies. We are subject to the state auditor's report for our financial documentation to show that we have complied with their standards. We are subject to L&I for our worker safety and for our certified payrolls. We are responsible to the Department of Ecology for compliance with our agreed orders on our remedial action grants. Therefore, we should not be reluctant in any way to hold state agencies accountable for their responsibilities to us. The interlocal agreement, most importantly, let me start with what it is not. It is not a commitment to litigation. It is a commitment to begin the work to address a formal legal complaint, but it is not a commitment to litigation. It will comprise 4 tasks: to develop a legal framework, to develop sponsors, to work with sponsors, to develop a legal action plan, to draft a formal complaint, and then to take that legally vetted formal complaint to the state attorney general and the Department of Revenue to seek a settlement and compliance. That's all this interlocal agreement does, is to initiate the conversation with strong legal background. The Port General Counsel has reviewed the interlocal agreement, has agreed with its concepts and its words and its end objectives. And now legal fund contributions are necessary to go ahead and push the ball across the finish line. The partners in this interlocal agreements are all those airport sponsors across the state that sell fuel. There are 2 commercial service hub airports, 9 commercial non-hub airports. We have a total of 11 airports in the state that provide commercial service. And there are 26 general aviation airports across the state that also provide fuel. Some of those are listed. The total contributions requested, 120,000. You can see the breakdown you see there. 26 general aviation airports are asked to provide a minimum of $1,000 each. Note, please, that the Port of Moses Lake has already contributed $5,000. The Port of Skagit contribution is $3,000. The Washington Pilots Association has also contributed to this effort. The recommendation from port staff for the Port of Olympia is to make a contribution of $3,000. Our next steps are in 2 parts. First is to execute the interlocal agreement, and secondly is to authorize the port contribution to the legal fund. I will state that authorizing the port contribution to legal fund is within the interim executive director's delegation of authority. So it does not need necessarily commission approval. However, port staff believes it would be helpful to have Port Commission approve not only the interlocal agreement, but also the contribution as a further message to the Department of Revenue and the State Attorney General. And as a result, I'm happy to take your questions and comments. And the 2 suggested motions, each one to be done in turn, are listed there for your review.
Question.
Please.
You shared that there are 2 public ports who apparently have already made a contribution, Skagit and Moses Lake.
There are more, several airports and ports have already made contributions. I called those 2 ports out specifically because they are in the same category as Olympia, and they have far exceeded the $1,000 minimum threshold.
So how many public ports in Washington are general aviation airport ports, and how many of them have signed on?
So in Washington State, there are 74 port districts, 34 of which are airport sponsors. I will have to take an IOU on exactly how many of those sell fuel and how many of those have contributed to date. I can have that information for you tomorrow.
Questions or comments for Warren?
I would just be curious to see the other ports that are contributing as well. Not to say we don't want to be an early adopter on this, but it does seem that some of the other ports have much larger contribution amounts. So if say Port of Spokane or Port of Seattle doesn't agree to this, then we may be on the hook for a much larger amount.
In the case of Spokane, it is not a port sponsored airport. It is the Spokane International Airport. It's a city-county 50-50 agreement between the 2 jurisdictions. They have contributed their $10,000. I do know that one for a fact.
You think Commissioner Harding? No, let's call for public comment then. We have John Dobson who signed up for this item, I believe.
Again, my name is John Dobson, of course, basic volunteer and wear many hats, but tonight I'm wearing one from the Washington Pilots Association. I am head of their legislative affairs, and I'm also head of the PAC, Political Action Committee, and I just want to confirm what Warren just said. I wrote the check 2 weeks ago for $5,000 to contribute to this. Been involved with the background on this project basically since 2014 when Tristan Atkins first brought it to me. I will make one quick comment, though. I know the Department of Revenue in the sales tax didn't. I think Warren mentioned something about 2.1 million. It's actually 5.8 million that is also being diverted, and that's not part of that 58 million. So there's been quite a bit of funds and money that's been, shall we say, kept in other areas. And I'm also, again, another one of the hats, I was director for the Port of Shelton. So I'm familiar with MONCA money, and I realize that HST and PPT, and it works its way on the backside of that. Chris Herman educates me quite well on that very issue. So you want to be very careful about that. But again, when the whole thing is all said and done, it really is a lot of money. Ann Reich, Richard and I were just talking about this Saturday at the Aviation Trade Fair. And it looks like she's going to actually put that in her budget going forward. So this is moving on. And as Warren said, this isn't really taking it to the courts and doing actual litigation yet, but it's putting the package together to help ensure that everybody really understands what's going on here. So my old port, Shelton, did take it up, and I do believe that they did contribute their $1,000. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So I think do we have Jim? No? Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dobson. Do we have any public comment on Zoom?
Zoom comment?
Jim.
Jim, hey, Jim.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Hey, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Jim Coons. I serve as the CEO of the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority. We're a port district that owns 4 municipal airports in Eastern Washington. So this issue is near and dear to us. And so the regional port has agreed to lead the effort as it relates to sending out interlocal agreements. And we've sent it out to a host of port districts in the state of Washington. And to date, response has been very positive. Now, not all ports that own airports will join this initiative. Many will, some will elect not to, but this is too big of an issue. This is funds that are supposed to go to airports throughout the state of Washington. It is not happening. And we need to make sure that we put all of our facts together, put the very best case forward to making sure that we have compliance from the state of Washington. And this is what this is about. Let's get compliance. Let's get the resources put into airports that what the statute says needs to be done. So thank you for the opportunity to comment, and thank you, board, for your consideration of joining this important coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Coons. Is there any other public comment on Zoom?
No additional public comment.
All right.
Could you pull the motions back up, please? I move to authorize the executive director to approve the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority ILA as presented.
I will second that. We have a motion and a second to authorize the executive director to approve the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority ILA as presented. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say I thought that Commissioner Vasavada, and there was some good discussion at the last meeting about how to best proceed, and we'll defer to staff as to the collaboration and coordinated effort that's being made. But to me, it just seems like a fairness issue. If users are paying fees that aren't being used the way they were intended, it seems like we need to figure that out. So if this is the best way to do that, then want to go ahead and support that.
I have discussion. Yes, thank you. And thank you for all the homework that got done. Because it sounds like we have someone from Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority on the line. Thank you for commenting today. And I would just like to share that my discomfort with this is not in doing a shared strategy, which I think is really good for ports to do, working together. And I'm comfortable also with advocating for further investment in airports and working to hold our state agencies accountable when necessary. My discomfort is in the actual litigation strategy memo that wanted to start with legal standing, which is sort of a theory you just have to overcome in order to go and file a lawsuit. It really doesn't have much to do with the substantive conversation between airports and the state. And so for me, that's $30,000 being spent up front that's really pointed at litigation. So I'm not very comfortable with the strategy that was outlined. And I for that reason, I don't support it, but I really appreciate kind of the comments as well as the expertise from our airport director today that went into this. Thank you.
Commissioner Tong, anything?
Yes, it's just, I understand where you're coming from, Jasmine, but we do need to be discriminatory of what we are supporting with our legal standing, but I mean, I agree also with Commissioner Harding that it's very important that these user fees are paid for a certain purpose, and this is what the federal guidance is dictating, so we need to move forward with something. If not this, then what would be my question?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that it's important that we go ahead and join this ILA with these other ports. I think that the outcome of this is going to be nothing but a benefit, not only just for our port, but also for Thurston County. So I am definitely in favor of moving forward with this. So unless there's any other discussion, I will call for the vote. We have a motion to authorize the executive director to approve the Chelan Douglas Regional Airport Authority ILA as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-1. Thank you very much. There is there, do I hear any other motions pertaining to this topic?
Move to authorize a legal fee contribution of $3,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented.
I move to amend the motion to authorize a legal fee contribution of $1,000 as asked.
Well, technically, we didn't have a second for the first motion.
Sorry.
That's okay. Do we have a second for the first motion? I will second the first motion. So we have a motion to authorize a legal fee contribution of $3,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I move to amend to $1,000 instead of $3,000 as we were asked.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to amend the original motion to reduce the amount from 3,000 to 1,000. We have a second. Is there any conversation or discussion on the amended motion?
If you have comment, Commissioner Tom. I have the same feeling that I did about the other motion, that I appreciate the staff bringing this to the commission. And so I would continue to support what the staff presented, because this would be in the executive director's discretion to do without. And I appreciate that you are wanting a united front on this. I don't particularly disagree with the amount, Commissioner Tom, more so just in that same vein of thinking.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, I would also, Commissioner Pasavada, do you want to say anything? No. I would also support what the staff brings forward with us. I think that if we're going to join this, we should join it enthusiastically. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment to the motion. The amendment is to authorize a legal fee contribution of $1,000 to Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay. That motion does not pass. So now we are back to the original motion to authorize a legal fee contribution of $3,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented. Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That motion does not pass. So, all right, well, we have a,
I'd like to make another motion, please.
Okay.
I would move to authorize a legal fee contribution of $2,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize a legal fee contribution of $2,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented. Any discussion? No discussion. Hearing no discussion, I will call for the vote to authorize a legal fee contribution of $2,000 to the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority in support of the ILA as presented. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hallelujah.
Getting to yes.
Opposed? All right, none opposed, so that
Hallelujah
motion.
in the rules resolution.
That motion.
I know.
that motion passes.
Next time.
That's how you negotiate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Good job. All right, thank you, Warren. Moving on, action other item, calendar item number 2, Clean Water Center 206 land lease, launch negotiations LLC, Florida Maddox, real estate senior manager. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I want to make sure this doesn't fall. I have to bring it from way up here to here. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be before you to bring to you a transaction that is commonly consent item, but in consideration of our new commission and being the last 2 transactions in clean water that we're going to do for the small 2 buildings that we have there, we thought it would be appropriate and considerate to bring the commission up to date of what we have done so far to bring it into a consent item. But today I'm going to be asking for an approval to request and for an approval to ratify. You will be ratifying. That is really the asking. So, oh, it's working. Mrs. waving over there. Today's presentation is an action other item because of what I just stated. It's typically a consent item, but I am going to be asking for approval to ratify the purchase and sale agreement of 2 buildings at the Clean Water Center and 2 long-term leases, land leases. And I want to give you a little bit of background for you to understand how we got here and why do we have it as a consent typically. In 2008, the port entered into a land lease agreement with a tenant for 10 acres of land at the then called Tumwater Town Center, but today we call it the Clean Water Center. In 2012, that tenant stopped paying rent and conveyed the improvements to the port. And the total improvements were 8 6,000 square foot buildings and 1 for 24,000 square foot buildings. So the land underneath those buildings was being leased to this individual. Having stopped payments and conveying it to the port, we took ownership of all the buildings. In 2014, the port began implementing the strategic plan initiative at Clean Water Town Center, at Clean Water Center, and the port worked with the city of Tumwater for the redevelopment of the 15. Actually, we have 10 acres there, but the initiative was to enter into redevelopment of 15 acres of commercial use and 30 acres of industrial land. In 2014, the Port Commission also approved investment for improving that Clean Water Center to make it marketable. And between 2014 and 15, the port began the project to bring the site to code. So we redid the stormwater, the lighting, the parking, the landscaping, and the utilities. Between 2016 and 17, the port retained ownership of 2 buildings, and we turned them into space leases. Those 2 buildings are where the Scribbles and Giggles Learning Center reside and the Washington State Patrol. Yes, ma'am?
They're Scribbles and Giggles.
Scribbles and Giggles, yes. 2016, we thought of a different business model. Instead of us, the port, revamping and repurposing those buildings, we thought it would be a better more suited way to attract businesses if we sold the buildings as they were, as is, condition, and to lease the land on long term. With that in mind, the commission approved a resolution 2016-06 declaring the building surplus and amending the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, and authorized the executive director to sell the buildings and to enter into long-term leases. That's how by that action, we enter into consent. We would bring it before the commission. You would know about every single sale and every long-term lease, but it would be under consent. In 2017 to 2023, the port sold 6 of the 6,000 square foot buildings, and 2 have completed renovations. 4 are undergoing their permitting process, and the current uses are eatery, yoga studios, martial arts, daycare, medical services, offices, and religious gatherings. Today, I'm presenting to you 2 long-term leases of land for the land and the sale of the 2 buildings, the last 2 buildings that we have of the 6,000 size. And wanted to give you the terms that we're entering for the long-term land leases. So we have gone through the customary due diligence process. The buildings are offered, and we have the money in hand of $40,000 for each of those 2 buildings. The land leases are 30 years with a 20-year option to extend that term. The rent is at 58 cents triple net per month, and the rent is adjusted annually 2%. And we have a year 15, we will appraise the land again to bring it to market. And so we'll adjust the rents based on that new appraised value. So if you have any questions or comments, this is a good time to do so. Otherwise, I have asked you to request that you move to ratify the purchase and sale agreements on long-term land leases with Launch Negotiations LLC as presented.
Thank you, Clarita. Commissioner Tone, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you, Clarita. Good information. I just want to say thank you as a new commissioner to your decision to bring this forward and brief it to us. So that
My pleasure.
Understand what's happening. I really appreciate it. You did reference in your briefing some planning documents about kind of how this came to pass. And so it seems to me, if I understand correctly, that whole development is now kind of in commercial, not industrial.
That's correct.
Use.
Yes.
And that's consistent, we believe, with sort of the long-term planning that had occurred with the city of Tumwater.
Yes.
For how they desired this area.
Yes, that is correct.
So, thank you.
Correct.
Was it in the packet what the use is? Can you tell us what the use is for?
These are investors. They have actually bought the buildings, and I have learned from them that they already have the architect in hand. One of the things that we request of them, anybody that owns those buildings, we have guidelines that we have adopted, the port has adopted for the repurposing. What is the theme? What are the colors? We want the whole center to be cohesive. And so they have an architect in hand already ready to move forward into the repurposing and the permitting under the guidelines, architectural guidelines that the port has adopted. So the uses, they haven't expressed them yet because they are in the marketing process themselves. They could be bringing anywhere between what we have, office space, salons, any services that they feel is appropriate for that area. And they have to comply with the code with the city of Tumwater for commercial and retail for that particular area, which is the Tumwater Town Center.
I think clean water in general is a good example of, in a perfect world, we would have developed it, maybe not, but it was going to look a certain way. And when that wasn't meeting the needs of the port, pivoting to something else and really activating that, and that impact on the community and the city of Tumwater and the tax base by pivoting to this strategy has been really successful. So I think as we continue to think about think about how the port's going to function. It's a good example of we tried one thing and then we pivoted to another direction that's really met the underlying goal of economic development and serving the city of Tumwater.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
I did have a question for you. This seems to be within the city of Tumwater. It's one of the few properties that can move forward for redevelopment without being compromised or on hold while we do the habitat conservation planning process. Can you speak to that a little bit?
This particular area, because it's already been developed, none of that applies. So we can move forward with just simply leasing the land and selling the dilapidated. Actually, they are completely out of code. So the investors come in and repurpose the buildings, invest their own money in creating activity and jobs and economic development, brings those things to our property. So they do not have to deal with that. And the port invested quite a bit of money to repurpose the district itself. So we have the right parking, we have the right stormwater, we have the appropriate utilities. And so that's how it has been looked at. And so when we came into adopting the new business approach to lease the land, we did an appraisal. And from that appraisal, we rented the land.
And when was that appraisal?
We started the first 2016, 17 is when we went ahead and did the appraisal. And the rents that get adopted today is based on how the other leases have moved up on an annual basis. So we don't go back to that original appraisal. We go back to, last year's, what were the rents last year? And this is adopted to that rate. So we go along with the market that we have established.
Commissioner, if I can add one comment to what Clarita said in response to your question. The real key factor that came into our favor with clean water was the fact that it was already paved. And so we didn't have issues associated with the gopher on those areas that had already been previously developed.
And essentially, without some sort of intervention, the H building is going to be undevelopable because of the cost of the road. Is that fair?
That is fair to say, yes, ma'am. So the Clean Water Center got divided by two lots. Lot 1, which contains all the small buildings. And then the lot 2 is where the other large H building is. If you look at the screen, you can see the two lots. So lot 1 is the small buildings, the 8 small buildings, and lot 2 is the H building, which has not been redeveloped or brought to code. The port did not invest in that. We would like to market it for somebody to come in and redevelop it and to bring it to code if they wish. But one of the things that we run into is the service road. The city requires that it becomes an actual access road, a street basically. And because of the habitat conservation plan, to widen it, we're gonna get into a parcel directly west of this that is affected by gopher. So we can't do anything. However, we do have a development agreement because we had opportunities perhaps to develop that particular lot 2 with the H building. And we made a commitment that when the habitat conservation plan would come along, we would jump in to try to develop that particular road.
I was talking to some people at WPPA about potential grant dollars for the
Yes.
road and how that would then make us be able to access
Yes.
the property, obviously, once the HCP is complete.
Yes. So that is my goal, is that we can jump into, we're seeking grants to see how we can bring some grant monies into the economic development lens to give us some opportunities to develop that road.
It's a great site from a real estate.
Yes, it is a great site.
All right, is there any public comment on the Clean Water Center? Public comment on Zoom?
No public comment. I would move to ratify the purchase and sale agreements and long-term land leases with Launch Negotiations LLC as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to ratify the purchase and sale agreements and long-term land leases with Launch Negotiations LLC as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So the ratification of the purchase and sale agreement, long-term land leases with Launch Negotiations LLC as presented has been passed.
Music to my ears. Thank you. So the next item in your agenda is for the other building. And I thought I would try to be respectful of your time and just do one single presentation for the background. And basically it's the exact same thing. One is building 206 and the next one is 210. So it's exact same, mirror each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4 in the action other calendar, the executive director contract. I believe HR Director Ben McDonald.
Yes, hello. Glad to be back to talk about this exciting topic. This is regarding the executive director employment contract. Today's presentation is for an action item. Approval will be requested. We're seeking approval of a new employment contract with Alexandra Smith for the position of executive director for the Port of Olympia. Little background on the recruitment. This was an extensive search conducted by Prothman Recruiting, concluded after 4 months. There were 35 applicants, 15 interviews, 4 finalists, and on February 13th, the commission selected Alex Smith and appointed myself and our general counsel to conduct negotiations. I have led those negotiations with Alex, and they have been great conversations. I can tell you that she's really excited to come on board. She can't wait to meet with staff, and we've had some good conversations. So the terms in the contract, she's requested a start date of March 18th, 2024. A salary amount of $210,000. Her medical, dental, and vision will be comparable to the rest of Port staff. We have plans through the HCA and our PEB program. Vacation leave, 13.65 hours per month. Her sick leave will be 10 hours per month, which is consistent with other Port staff. Then the leave bank, we always do this for other employees coming on board, grant them 40 hours of vacation to start and 40 hours of sick leave to start. God forbid something happen early on in their tenure. That was really the meat of the contract. There are minor details in there, as you guys have seen the draft at different times. But this is really questions and comments. And if there's something that was missed or need to be clarified, happy to entertain those. But otherwise, there's a suggested motion for you.
All right, questions, comments?
I have 2 questions. Thank you so much. This is very exciting. My questions are as follows. 1, I think we did our best to have a really open and transparent and inclusive process. I did hear from people who are active, like, and engaged in matters at the port, that some people had an expectation that at that public reception we held, there would be a Q&A, a formal Q&A opportunity. And in fact, it was more an informal reception meet and greet type of opportunity. There had been a miscommunication or back and forth with some port staff about that and just misinterpretation. I'm raising that to ask whether it would be possible to create that kind of an opportunity for our new director when she comes to hold a public information sort of forum where members of the public can ask her questions and she can address her history at the port and her vision moving forward. Would you be able to pursue that for us?
I think that will be between the commission and the executive director when she comes on board for something to determine a date that makes sense. And if that is what she would be agreeable to, I'm happy to take that conversation to her and see if that's something that she's willing to, discuss.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And my second question was, for those of us who've just come off the campaign trail, I mean, the stories we read about management at the port and the issues with the former executive director leaving, I've come to see, I think the port is actually pretty well managed. We have a great talented staff. But there is concern about the kind of severance packages that are
Sure.
customary in the
Mhm.
ports world.
Yeah.
Can you speak at all to
Sure.
to how that's addressed in our contract?
Yeah, and we discussed at different times this idea of a golden parachute, somebody's severance as they depart. That's also not to get confused with different claims and settlements that the commission has approved through other means. It was not part of somebody's severance agreement. But that being said, the severance was discussed at length with Alex, and so it was shortened. It was originally 6 months. She agreed to 3 months severance if she is terminated prior to 12 months of employment. And so if terminated prior to 12 months of employment, she would receive from the Port of Olympia 3 months compensation. In the contract, it was written under that article that each 24-month mark of employment, she would earn an extra month of severance, not to exceed a total of 5 months. And so essentially at her 5-year mark, should she be here 5 years or longer, she will have earned 5 months total separation. If she works 6, 10, 20 years, it's not going to keep going. So there are severance packages for executives are very normal, and just how we get to those terms vary. And I think it met, I think, the desires of the commission as well as Alex. And so, yeah, she's okay with that.
Permission for one follow-up? You referenced also the difference between that and termination for cause.
Right.
Can you address how that works in our?
Yep. If it's for cause, I believe there's a 30-day notification. I'm maybe not remembering clearly on that, and I may have to come back to you for cause on those details. I don't have the contract in front of me. I apologize. But the 4-clause article is, it's actually, you guys have the right for no notice. It's an at-will employee. You can just say tomorrow is the end of your time. And so there is that language in there as an at-will employee. And if it's for cause, it's right away.
And just to, I fully foresee none of this will ever be activated.
Of course.
I think the transparency in which we've done this work, and thank you, Ben, for your work.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, President. I'm done.
Mr. Don, any questions?
No question.
No questions. All right. Is there a motion?
Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there going to be public comment on this?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Yes, public comment. Is there any public comment on the Zoom?
Joe Downing?
Did you say there is? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Joe
hear.
Downing.
Oh, Joe Downing. Oh, okay.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are. Joe, you have the floor.
Hello, commissioners. Always great to see you, even though it's not in the flesh. Zoom is pretty good. I'd like to speak to, of course, this issue right in front of you tonight as an action other item. Looking at, I did a little internet research while I was listening in on your meeting, and I'm going to make the premise that the pay package, while Alex Smith is a great choice, and I wish her every success, and I thank you for picking her and your great deliberations and process. That being said, my internet research says that Thurston County, the brand new county manager, is going to be making $220,000. The Lacey city manager makes about $225,000. The Olympia city manager makes about $175,000, and the Tumwater city manager makes about $182,000. So the average of all those city managers and county manager is exactly $200,500. So I would argue that the port is nowhere near as complex as Olympia, Tumwater, or Lacey, and certainly not as complex as Thurston County with 1,000+ employees. The port has about, 50 or so employees. So, I just hope that you take that into consideration before you ratify or approve this negotiation. I think that starting salary in the range of 180 to 200 thousand per year is more appropriate. That's all I have to say. Good luck, and it's great to see you tonight.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any other public comment?
No additional public comment.
All right,
I would move to authorize the president of the Commission of the Port of Olympia to sign an employment contract with Alexandra Smith for the position of executive director to begin on March 18th, 2024, under the terms outlined.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would just say I support Commissioner Vasavada's idea of having some sort of town hall. And I think our executive director expressed a willingness to do that. So figuring that out with her once she takes her position. I also am not an HR professional, but the severance, I think that shows a willingness on her part, because that's very low for that level of a position. And I think it shows that she's investing in us and we're investing in her. And I really appreciate that. And I think it helps us turn the page, which I cannot be more excited to turn the page and for the bright future at the port, with Alex at the helm and her steady hand, and then our whole port staff, the commission, community working together. It's very, very exciting.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize the president of the Commission of the Port of Olympia to sign an employment contract with Alexandra Smith for the position of executive director to begin on March 18th, 2024. And you had something you added
As outlined.
as outlined. Thank you. So we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Alex. We're all very excited about looking forward to meeting with and working with Alex.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. There's nothing on the advisory calendar. Moving on to commissioner reports and discussion. Commissioner Tong, would you like to start?
Yes, I do not have anything to report, and I just want to say I'm very excited, like Amy said, or Commissioner Harding, for Alex to join us at the helm and just turn the new page. Great stuff.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Harding?
My quote of the day is from Wayne Dyer. And he said, manifesting is not about attracting what you want. Manifesting is an awareness and an understanding that you attract what you are.
Thank you. I share the excitement to turn this page at the port. I will get to next week attend the first meeting in my capacity as the sea level rise commissioner. And I've started meeting with some electeds from different jurisdictions like Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, Thurston County, and the Thurston County Conservation Commission, just informally to trade information. Those of us who are particularly focused on sustainability and environmental opportunities. I think there are so many opportunities for cross-jurisdictional collaboration. And one thing I'd love my fellow commissioners and the port staff to start to think about is that until now, there is sort of a formal collaborative that's been created by the regulatory entities, the 3 cities and the county on climate work. And it would be great for us to find a seat at that table. They have staff who are actually working the issues, and the electeds are moving forward. So that's one of the things I'd like us to look to be a little bit more integrated with our fellow jurisdictions. And I guess that's my main update for now.
All right, thank you very much. Hopefully you don't forget about the tribes in that collaborative.
Ooh, I will find out.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to other business. Is there any other business this evening? Rick, you have
Thank you.
something for us in other business?
This is probably the first time I've ever spoken in 2 years on other business. I just wanted to say, thank you for allowing me to be your general counsel for the last 2 years. And, if everything goes according to plan, I plan to be here a few more months, but I wanted to let you know it's been an honor. And I'm letting you know now so you can do some planning as to what you want to do with this position. I replaced someone who was in-house, and I don't know what your plans are in that respect, but I wanted to make sure that you have plenty of time to, to plan for this position. It's been an honor. The work is really great. It's been great to work with the commissioners and staff. I just want to get my weekends back and have a little more work-life balance. But thank you. And if you have any questions about plans or anything like that, or if I can help you with planning for the position at all, just let me know. I'd be happy to help you in any way I can.
Appreciate the work you've done for the board.
Can I have a question, comment on that?
Sure.
The in-house counsel was a position that was, it was split between the commissioners, correct, Rick? And the executive director or the organization, as far as where the authority was.
I think there was dual reporting. That's my recollection.
I believe there was dual reporting, and so I just want to ping Ben. I think this is something that once Alex is in place, the commission would appropriately be in conversation with, because that person directly reports to the commission, or did, if we were to do that again. And so having that conversation with you and her as to what you guys see best organizationally and what the commission feels. And I think having Rick inform us as to what he's been doing, what he sees the needs moving forward, because we still contract out specialized legal services as necessary. So putting that on the Alex's agenda with the commission.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, move on to meeting announcements. Rudy, that's all you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So Monday, March 11th, 5:30 p.m. normal commission meeting here. Monday, March 18th, in the afternoon at 3:30 commission work session. Tuesday, March the 19th at 6 p.m. will be the POCAC meeting, and Monday, March 25th, 5:30 commission meeting here.
Okay, any questions or comments about the meeting announcement? Hearing no other business, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
It was a reach.